I spent 15 years paying my parents' mortgage and funding every renovation, believing the property was my future inheritance. Then I discovered they secretly transferred the deed to my unemployed sister for $1. I vanished without a word. 6 months later, the tax bill arrived. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The fluorescent lights of the urgent care waiting room were humming with a sound that felt like it was drilling directly into my left temple. I was sitting on the crinkly paper of the exam table, shivering despite the heavy wool coat I still had draped over my shoulders. It had been a brutal week of tax season, 70 hours of staring at spreadsheets, followed immediately by a bout of pneumonia that had knocked me flat on my back. I felt small, fragile, and incredibly lonely. My lungs rattled every time I took a breath. I just wanted my mom. I wanted soup. I wanted to hear that everything was going to be okay. When my phone buzzed on the metal tray table, flashing Dad, I felt a surge of relief so potent it almost made me cry. I picked it up with a shaking hand. "Hey, Dad," I rasped, my voice barely a whisper. "I'm actually at the urgent care right now. I think it's pneumonia. I was wondering if—" "Allison, listen." William's voice cut through the line, loud and jarringly cheerful. He didn't hear the wheeze in my throat. He didn't ask why I was at the doctor's. "Your mother and I have some wonderful news. We didn't want to wait to tell you." I swallowed, the dryness in my throat stinging. "Oh, what is it?" "We've finally settled the estate planning," he said. The pride in his voice was unmistakable. "We know how much you've worried about the house and the upkeep and all that nonsense over the years. So, we decided to simplify everything." That's good," I said, leaning back against the cold wall, closing my eyes. "I was actually going to come over this weekend to look at the boiler again. I think the pilot light needs—" "No need," he interrupted again. "That's the best part. You don't have to worry about the boiler or the roof or the taxes anymore. We signed the house over to Chloe this morning." The room went silent. The humming of the light seemed to stop. The rattling in my chest froze. "I'm sorry," I whispered, thinking the fever must be hallucinating words into my ear. "You did what?" "We sold the house to Chloe," William repeated, slower this time, as if explaining something to a toddler. "For $1. It's a gift. She's had such a hard time lately, finding herself, you know? She needs a stable foundation, a place to call her own. We knew you'd be relieved to have that burden off your shoulders since you have your own apartment and your fancy career." I sat up, the room spinning violently. "You gave the house to Chloe, the house I've paid the mortgage on for 10 years, the house I put a new roof on last summer." "Allison, don't start," my mother, Cora, chimed in from the background. Her voice was sharp, instantly defensive. "You're always keeping score, you have plenty. Chloe has nothing. It's about equity, not equality. We thought you'd be happy for your sister." "I have plenty because I work 80 hours a week," I said, my voice rising, cracking under the strain of the sickness. "I paid off your debts, Dad. I paid off your car. The agreement was that the house was my investment. That was the deal." "There was no written deal," William said, his tone turning cold, the cheerfulness evaporating instantly. "We are the parents. It is our house. We do what is best for the family. And right now, the family needs to support Chloe. You're doing fine, Allison. Stop being so greedy." "Greedy?" I choked out the word. "I'm sitting in an urgent care clinic with pneumonia, and you're telling me you gave my inheritance to the sister who hasn't held a job since 2018. "See, this is why we didn't tell you until it was done," Cora said. "You're too emotional. It's done, Allison. The papers are filed. Chloe is the owner. Be a good sister and send her a congratulations card. She's very excited." The line went dead. They hung up. I stared at the black screen of my phone. The doctor walked in a moment later, holding a clipboard, looking concerned at my pale face. "Ms. Vance, are you all right? Your vitals are a bit erratic," the doctor said gently. I looked up at him, feeling a coldness spreading through my veins that had nothing to do with the infection in my lungs. It was a freezing, absolute clarity. "I'm fine," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "I just received a very expensive lesson in trust. The betrayal was worse than the diagnosis itself." The antibiotics cleared the fluid from my lungs over the next week, but nothing could clear the heavy, leaden HT that had settled in my stomach. I took 3 days off work, something I had never done in my entire career as a forensic accountant, and spent them sitting in my dim living room, wrapped in a quilt, staring at the wall. I didn't call them back. I didn't text Chloe. My phone blew up, of course. Chloe text, "Hey sis, heard the news. So excited to finally host Christmas this year. Strict rules though, no shoes in the house lol." Mom text, "Answering your father would be polite, Allison. We are disappointed in your reaction. We raised you better." Dad voicemail, "Ali, pick up. Chloe wants to paint the master bedroom and she says you have a discount at the hardware store. Call her back. She needs your account number." I listened to that voicemail 3 times. The audacity was breathtaking. It was almost impressive. They had stripped me of a $500,000 asset, violated a decade-long verbal contract, and trampled on my financial future, yet they still expected to use my hardware store loyalty rewards points. It was pathological. On the 4th day, I finally got up. I took a shower, washing the sickness and the self-pity off my skin. I dried my hair, put on my sharpest blazer, and sat down at my desk. I opened my laptop and logged into the county clerk's public records database. It's what I do. I follow money. I find hidden assets. I trace fraud. I usually do it for massive corporations or during high-stakes divorce litigation, but today I was working pro bono for myself. I typed in the address, 142 Maplewood Drive. There it was, the deed transfer, recorded 2 days before I ended up in urgent care. Grantor, William and Cora Vance. Grantee, Chloe Vance. Consideration, $1. Seeing it in black and white hit me harder than the phone call. It was legal. It was real. They had actually done it. I scrolled down, looking at the history of the property. I saw the permits for the roof I had paid for. I saw the permit for the deck extension I had funded 2 years ago. My eyes scanned the document, looking for the standard clauses. And then I stopped. I leaned closer to the screen, my heart doing a strange little stutter step in my chest. I cross-referenced the transfer with the county tax assessor's recent updates. I sat back in my chair, a slow, cold smile touching my lips for the first time in weeks. My parents and Chloe had rushed this. They had done it quietly to avoid arguing with me. They had likely used an online form or a cheap paralegal to file the quitclaim deed to save money on a real estate attorney. In their haste to hand Chloe a free house and cut me out, they had bypassed the standard title search and the consultation regarding tax implications. They saw the house as a static object, a box to live in. I saw the house for what it was, a taxable asset subject to state-county reassessment laws upon transfer of ownership. In our state, a transfer between parents and children can be excluded from property tax reassessment, keeping the low tax rate based on the value from 30 years ago. And this was a massive, beautiful, but you have to file the specific exclusion form within strict time limits. And more importantly, the exclusion usually only applies if the property continues to be the primary residence of the transferors or if specific conditions are met regarding the transferee's occupancy. But there was something else, a detail regarding the zoning change that had happened in the neighborhood last year. The house was now sitting on land zoned for mixed-use development, which skyrocketed the land value, but the old assessment was locked in until a transfer occurred. I checked the filings. There was no exclusion form attached. No Proposition 19 paperwork. Nothing, just a raw, naked transfer of title. They had triggered a full reassessment. The current tax bill was based on the 1990 value of the home, $125,000. The current market value of the home, thanks to the gentrification I had helped fund with my renovations. $650,000. I did the math on a sticky note. Their annual property tax bill was about to jump from $1,800 a year to approximately $9,500 a year. And because the transfer date was retroactive to the filing, the county would send a supplemental bill for the difference immediately. I looked at the text from Chloe about no shoes in the house. I picked up the sticky note and stuck it to my monitor. I wasn't going to warn them. I wasn't going to save them. They wanted to treat the house like a game of favorites? Fine. I would play by the rules they had set. They thought they had won a house. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. Ownership isn't just about assets, it's about liabilities. To understand why this betrayal felt like a physical amputation, you have to understand the last 10 years of my life. I wasn't just a dutiful daughter. I was the financial immune system of the Vance family. When I was 24, just starting at the firm, Dad hurt his back. He went on disability, which paid a fraction of his salary. Mom worked part-time at a bakery, but she couldn't handle stress, so she never sought full-time work. They were drowning. The bank was threatening foreclosure on the house I grew up in. I stepped in. I didn't just help, I took over. I moved back in for 2 years to pay the mortgage directly. When I moved out, I kept paying it. "This house will be yours one day, Allison," Dad had said, tears in his eyes, holding my hand across the kitchen table. "You're saving our legacy. We're just caretakers for you now." I believed him. Why wouldn't I? I was their daughter. I was the responsible one. I poured my bonuses into that house. New siding? $12,000. New HVAC? $8,500. I landscaped the backyard so Mom could have her garden. I viewed it as investing in my future home, a place where I would eventually raise my own family. And then there was Chloe. Chloe is 3 years younger than me. If I am the forensic accountant, methodical, quiet, structured, Chloe is the chaotic hurricane. She is objectively beautiful, I'll give her that. Blonde, blue-eyed, with a way of looking at you that makes you feel like you should be apologizing for existing. Chloe has never finished anything in her life. She dropped out of college after 1 semester because the vibe was toxic. She went to cosmetology school, but quit because standing all day hurt her feet. She tried to be a real estate agent, but failed the exam 3 times. For the last 5 years, her profession has been vague. She calls herself a lifestyle curator on Instagram. What this actually means is that she posts photos of lattes, outfits she buys and returns the next day, and aesthetic shots of my parents' living room. She lives in a reality distortion field where money just appears. And usually, it appeared from my wallet, filtered through my parents. "Chloe needs braces," Mom would say. I'd write a check. "Chloe's car broke down, she can't get to interviews," Dad would say. I'd write a check. I tolerated it because I loved them, and because I thought we were a team. I thought they respected my hard work. 2 weeks after the urgent care call, I finally saw them. It was unintentional. I was at the grocery store, 3 towns over, trying to avoid exactly this encounter. I turned the corner of the cereal aisle and nearly collided with Chloe and Mom. They looked prosperous. Chloe was wearing a new designer coat, faux fur, cream-colored, totally impractical. Mom had her hair professionally colored. "Allison," Mom gasped, clutching her chest. Then her face hardened. "You have some nerve, ignoring your father for 2 weeks." Chloe smirked, adjusting a pair of sunglasses on her head. "She's just jealous, Mom. Let her be. Not everyone handles change well." I looked at Chloe. She looked glowing, radiant with the victory of acquiring a house for the price of a gumball. "I'm not jealous, Chloe," I said, my voice calm, though my heart was hammering. "I'm impressed. It takes a special kind of talent to manipulate 2 elderly people into disinheriting the only person who kept a roof over their heads." "Excuse me," Mom snapped, stepping forward. "We are not elderly, and we were not manipulated. We made a choice. Chloe is going to turn the house into a content studio. She has a vision. She's going to make passive income." A content studio, I repeated flatly. Yes, Chloe said, flipping her hair. I'm going to renovate the garage into a podcast lounge. Dad is already tearing down those old shelves you built. My stomach clenched. Those shelves. I had built them with Dad 5 years ago. We had spent a whole weekend measuring and cutting wood. It was one of my favorite memories. Dad is tearing down the shelves, I asked, my voice barely audible. They were ugly, Chloe said with a shrug. Industrial chic is out. We're going for boho minimalist. Look, Allison, if you're going to be bitter, just stay away. I don't need your negative energy in my house. My house. She said it with such ease, as if she had earned it, as if the mortar between the bricks wasn't mixed with my sweat and my money. Mom nodded in agreement. She's right. You've been very cold, Allison. We expected you to be supportive. Until you can apologize to your sister and be happy for her success, don't bother coming by for Sunday dinner. Success, they called it success. I looked at the cart they were pushing. It was full of premium steaks, expensive wine, and high-end skincare products. They were celebrating, spending money they didn't have, banking on the equity of the house they had just stolen. Okay, I said. I stepped back, creating distance between us. I won't come by, I won't call. I won't bother you with my negative energy. Good, Mom said, turning her back on me. Just one thing, I said. Chloe paused, looking back over her shoulder, bored. What? I looked her dead in the eye. Make sure you check TH. Email. The county is usually pretty prompt with their welcome packages. Whatever, nerd, she laughed. I watched them walk away, laughing, scanning the wine selection. They looked like people who had won the lottery. They didn't realize they were holding a grenade, and the pin had already been pulled. The transition from daughter to forensic accountant didn't happen overnight. It took about 3 days of silence for the emotional callus to form over the wound. Once it did, I stopped feeling sad and started feeling efficient. I sat in my office on the 42nd floor, looking out over the city skyline. My desk was covered in high-stakes audit files for a pharmaceutical merger, but my second monitor was dedicated to the Vance project. Step 1 was the severance of financial veins. For years, I had everything on auto pay: the homeowner's insurance for my parents' house, my credit card, the bundled internet and cable package, my checking account, the landscaping service, my personal debit card. I didn't call to cancel them. That would be too emotional. I simply logged into my bank portal and reported my cards as lost stolen. The bank instantly issued new numbers. Within 48 hours, the automated emails started rolling in. Payment declined, State Farm Insurance. Payment failed, Comcast Xfinity. Payment rejected, Green Thumb Landscaping. I deleted the notifications without opening them. I imagined the confusion at 142 Maplewood Drive, the internet cutting out right in the middle of Chloe's lifestyle upload, the landscapers skipping the lawn, the letter from the insurance company arriving in the mail, warning of a lapse in coverage. But that was just petty housekeeping. The real work was digging into the new owner of the property. I knew Chloe was bad with money, but I had never looked at her financials professionally. I had always respected her privacy, even when I was bailing her out. Now, however, she had inserted herself into a property dispute involving my capital investments. That made her fair game. I pulled her public credit profile. It wasn't hard. I had her social security number from when I helped her file her taxes 3 years ago, back when she worked as a freelance dog walker for 2 months. The report that generated on my screen was a sea of red flags. Chloe wasn't just broke, she was insolvent. Score, 540. Credit utilization, 98%. Collections, 3 accounts in default. But then I saw something that made me sit up straight. A judgment filed in small claims court 4 months ago. Starling Luxury Apartments versus Chloe Vance. She had been evicted from her last apartment for non-payment of rent, owing $6,200. I leaned back, steepling my fingers. My parents didn't know this. They thought she had moved home because she was lonely and wanted to help them. They had no idea she was legally homeless and running from debt collectors. Then I looked at the liens. There was a fresh tax lien from the State Franchise Tax Board for unpaid taxes on her business, a failed dropshipping scheme she ran in 2022. This was critical leverage. If Chloe owned the house, these creditors could potentially attach liens to the property. My parents thought they were securing the house by giving it to her. In reality, they had just thrown their paid-off home into a shark tank of debt collectors. I printed everything. The credit report, redacted for legal reasons but clear enough, the eviction judgment, the tax lien. I organized it all into a crisp, black binder. I wasn't ready to use it yet. I needed the timing to be perfect. I needed the situation to ripen. I waited. 1 month passed, then 2, then 3. I missed my father's birthday. I sent a card, no check. I missed Mother's Day. I sent flowers, no visit. They sent angry texts. Dad, your mother cried all day, I hope you're happy. Chloe, you're such a toxic narcissist, we don't need you anyway. I didn't reply, I just watched the calendar. 6 months, that was the magic number. That was the processing time for the county assessor's office to finalize the supplemental tax roll for the year. On October 14th, a Tuesday, I got a notification on my phone from the county property alert system I had subscribed to years ago. New tax bill issued, 142 Maplewood Drive. Amount due, $4,780.22, installment 1 of 2. Supplemental bill, $3,200. The bomb had landed. Almost exactly 4 hours later, my phone rang. It was my mother. I let it go to voicemail. Then my father called, twice, then the landline from the house. Finally, a text from Dad. Dad, Allison, please pick up. It's an emergency, legal matter, we need your expertise. I smiled, took a sip of my lukewarm coffee, and picked up the phone. Hello, I answered, keeping my voice cool and professional, the same tone I used for auditing non-compliant clients. Allison, oh, thank God. Dad's voice was shaky. He sounded older than he had 6 months ago. Panic does th. At to people, we have a problem, a big problem. I think the county made a mistake, a massive clerical error. What kind of mistake? I asked, swiveling my chair to look at the view. We got a bill, he stammered. For the property taxes, Allison, it's nearly $10,000. And there's a letter saying we owe back taxes for the supplemental assessment. I don't understand. Our taxes have always been $1,800. Always. Did you read the letter carefully? I asked. Yes, it says the property was reassessed due to change in ownership. But we didn't sell it. We just gave it to Chloe. It's still in the family. Dad, I said, my voice dropping an octave, devoid of sympathy. Transferring a title is a change of ownership. It doesn't matter if you sold it for $1 million or $1. The county sees a new owner. The Proposition 13 protection you had since 1990, that died the moment you signed that deed. Silence, heavy, suffocating silence on the other end. But Mom's voice came on the line, shrill and terrified. But we can't pay this. We're on a fixed income. We don't have $10,000 just lying around. Well, I said, technically you don't owe it. Chloe does, it's her house, remember. Chloe doesn't have any money. Mom snapped, the fear turning into anger. She's just getting her studio set up. She hasn't monetized yet. Then she has a problem, I said calmly. If the taxes aren't paid, the county will put a lien on the house. Eventually, they'll auction it off. Allison, stop it, Dad pleaded. You're the accountant. You know how to fix this. You know the forms. Can't we undo it? Can't we tell them it was a mistake? You want me to help you commit fraud? I asked. You want me to tell the county you didn't mean to sign a legal document that you had notarized and filed? That's perjury, Dad. We need the money, he said, his voice breaking. We need you to pay it, just this once, until we get this sorted. Please, Ali, it's your childhood home. It's not my home, I corrected him sharply. It's Chloe's asset, and frankly, I'm a little confused. With all the money you're saving on the mortgage I used to pay, surely you have enough. We spent it, Mom whispered. The renovations, the garage. Right, I said, the podcast lounge. You have to help us. Chloe's voice suddenly screamed into the phone. She must have been listening on speaker. You have plenty of money, you're just sitting on it while we lose everything. You're doing this on purpose. Hello, Chloe, I said. Nice to hear from you. And yes, I am doing this on purpose. Or rather, I am not doing anything on purpose. There is a difference. You're a monster, Chloe spat. You knew this would happen, you knew about the taxes. Of course I knew, I said, letting the words hang in the air. I'm a forensic accountant. It's my job to know, but nobody asked me. You told me I was too emotional. You told me to stay away, so I did. I'm going to fix this myself, Chloe threatened. I'm going to the bank. I'll take out a loan against the house to pay the taxes. I have equity now. The house is worth almost 700 grand. I don't need you. I almost laughed. I really, truly almost laughed out loud. Go ahead, Chloe, I said. Go to the bank. Walk into the loan officer's office and ask for a home equity line of credit. See what they say. I will, she screamed. And when I save the house, you're never allowed back in. Fair deal, I said. Good luck with the application. I hung up the phone. My hand was trembling slightly, not from fear, but from adrenaline. The first trap had sprung. The tax bill was the pressure. But the second trap, the bank loan, was where the steel jaws would snap shut. 3 days later, the second phase of their collapse began. I knew exactly what was happening without being there. Chloe would have walked into the local branch of Chase or Wells Fargo, wearing her best business chic outfit, asking for a home equity line of credit, HELOC. She would have confidently stated that she owned a home worth $650,000 free and clear. And the loan officer would have smiled, typed her social security number into the system, and then stopped smiling. You can't get a loan if you have a credit score of 540. You can't get a loan if you have zero verifiable income. You certainly can't get a loan if you have active collections and judgments. The house had equity, yes, but the borrower was radioactive. I received a text from my father on Thursday. Dad, we need to talk, in person, tonight. I didn't reply. He texted again. Dad, please, Mom is having heart palpitations. We are scared. I sighed. It was time. I grabbed the black binder I had prepared months ago. I put on my coat. I drove the 40 minutes to the house I used to think was mine. When I pulled into the driveway, I noticed the grass was overgrown. The green thumb. Landscaping service had clearly stopped coming. The flower beds I had planted were choked with weeds. I walked up the steps and unlocked the door with my key. The inside was a disaster. The living room was half-painted in a jarring shade of terracotta that looked more like dried blood. There were drop cloths everywhere. And the famous podcast lounge? I peeked into the garage. It was a half-demolished wreck. The shelves were torn down, leaving jagged holes in the drywall, but nothing had been built to replace them. Just piles of lumber and expensive-looking soundproofing foam that was gathering dust. My parents and Chloe were sitting at the kitchen table. The atmosphere was funereal. Chloe looked ragged, her makeup was smeared, and she was wearing sweatpants. Mom looked pale and small. Dad looked angry. You came, Dad said, standing up. I did, I said, placing the black binder on the table with a heavy thud. I didn't sit down. I stood at the head of the table, looking down at them like a presiding judge. The bank said no, Chloe muttered, staring at her hands. They said my debt-to-income ratio was unworkable. Imagine that, I said. They said we could co-sign, Dad said, looking at me with desperation. But because we're retired, our income isn't high enough to cover a new loan of that size plus our living expenses. They need a third co-signer, someone with a high income. He looked at me. The expectation was heavy in the air. No, I said. Allison, Mom cried. You can't let us lose the house. It's just a signature. We'll pay the monthly payments. You can't afford the monthly payments, I said. You can't even afford the taxes. And I am not co-signing a loan for a house I don't own with a primary borrower who has a history of default. I don't have a history of default, Chloe snapped. I opened the binder. I flipped to the first tab. Starling Luxury Apartments, I read aloud. Eviction judgment, $6,200 owed, unpaid. I flipped the page. State Franchise Tax Board, lien, $2,400 owed, unpaid. I flipped the page again. Credit Card 1, charge-off, $4,500. Credit Card 2, in collections, $3,100. I looked up. Chloe's face had drained of all color. She looked like a ghost. My parents were staring at her, mouths open in shock. You were evicted," Mom whispered. "You told us your lease was up and you just didn't like the neighbors." Chloe stammered. It was a misunderstanding. The landlord was a creep. "And the credit cards?" Dad asked, his voice rising. "Chloe, you told us you were debt-free." "I am," she lied. "These are old. Allison hacked my accounts. This is illegal." "It's public record, Chloe," I said calmly. "It's not hacking, it's reality. And here is the reality of the situation." I leaned forward, placing both hands on the table. "You have a tax bill of $10,000 due in 30 days. You have no way to pay it. You cannot borrow against the house because Chloe's credit is destroyed. If you don't pay, the county will eventually sell the house to satisfy the tax debt." "So we sell it," Chloe said suddenly, her eyes lighting up with a desperate, greedy gleam. "We sell the house now, before the tax deadline. We list it for $650,000. We pay the taxes, pay off my debts, and buy a smaller place for Mom and Dad. We can still cash out." My parents looked at each other. Hope flickered in their eyes. It was a cowardly way out, but it was a way out. "Yes," Dad said slowly. "We could sell, downsize, it makes sense." "Great idea," Chloe said, standing up. "I know a realtor. We can list it next week." "Sit down," I said. My voice was like a whip crack. They froze. "You can't sell it," I said. "Why not?" Chloe sneered. "It's my house. I can do whatever I want." "Because," I said, flipping to the back of the binder, "I have placed a lease pendens on the property as of this morning." "A what?" Mom asked. "A notice of pending legal action," I explained. "I am suing Chloe for unjust enrichment and constructive trust." "You're suing your sister," Dad shouted. "Are you insane?" "I spent $140,000 on this house over the last 10 years, I said, pulling out a spreadsheet detailing every check, every contractor invoice, every mortgage payment I had made. "I have the receipts. I have the bank statements. I made those payments under the verbal contract that this was an investment in my future inheritance. By transferring the house to Chloe, you breached that contract." I slid the spreadsheet across the table toward them. "The lawsuit alleges that Chloe has been unjustly enriched by my capital improvements. No title company will insure the sale of this house while there is a pending lawsuit attached to the deed. You cannot sell it. You cannot refinance it. You are trapped. You would destroy this family over money." Mom was crying now, ugly, heaving sobs. "You destroyed this family for $1, I said coldly. "I'm just balancing the ledger." "What do you want?" Dad asked. He looked defeated. He slumped in his chair, the fight draining out of him. "Just tell us what you want, Allison." I looked at the three of them. The panic, the betrayal, the realization that they had played a game against a professional and lost. "I want the house," I said, "and I want you out." The silence in the kitchen was absolute. The only sound was the refrigerator humming, a refrigerator I had bought 3 years ago. You want us out?" Mom's voice was a whisper, filled with a horror so genuine it almost made me pity her. Almost. "Not just out," I said, my voice steady. "I want the deed signed over to me, today." "You can't do that," Chloe shrieked, slamming her hand on the table. "This is my house. Mom and Dad gave it to me. You can't just steal it." I'm not stealing it, I corrected her. I'm buying it for the same price you paid, $1. No, Chloe screamed. I won't sign. I'll fight you in court. I'll get a lawyer. With what money? I asked. You have no income. You have negative assets. And if you try to fight me, I will drag this out for 2 years. During that time, the tax bill will go unpaid. The county will foreclose. You will lose the house anyway, and you'll end up with a foreclosure on your record alongside your eviction. You will never be able to rent a decent apartment or get a car loan for 7 years. I turned to my parents. And you, I said to Dad, you're listed as occupants. If the sheriff comes to evict the owner for tax foreclosure, you get put out on the street too. Is that what you want? To be evicted at 65 because you bet on the wrong daughter? Dad looked at Chloe. He looked at the binder of her debts. He looked at the half-demolished garage that was supposed to be her studio. For the first time in his life, the blinders fell away. He saw her not as the golden child who needed protecting, but as the anchor that was dragging them all to the bottom. She's right, Chloe, Dad said, his voice raspy. Dad, Chloe gasped. She's right, he repeated, louder this time. He looked at me, his eyes full of shame and resignation. We can't pay the taxes. We can't sell it because of the lawsuit. If we don't sign it over, we lose everything. But where will I live? Chloe wailed. I gave up my apartment. You were evicted from your apartment, I reminded her. We can't just be homeless, Allison, Mom pleaded, wiping her eyes. Please have some mercy. I do have mercy, I said. Here is the deal. I pulled a prepared document from the back of the binder. A quitclaim deed, ready for signatures. Option A, Chloe signs the house over to me immediately. I will pay the overdue taxes. I will pay off the lien. I will assume full ownership. In exchange, I will allow Mom and Dad to live here rent-free for the rest of their lives. They just have to pay their own utilities. Mom let out a sob of relief. Oh, thank God, thank God. However, I continued, turning my cold gaze to Chloe. Chloe, you have 30 days to vacate. You are not part of this lease agreement. What? Chloe's jaw dropped. You're kicking me out. I'm your sister. You are a tenant who contributes nothing but debt and chaos, I said. You're an adult. Figure it out. Mom, Chloe turned to her, grabbing her arm. Don't let her do this. Mom looked at me. Then she looked at the tax bill on the table. She looked at the peeling paint on the walls. She looked at the daughter who had lied to her about everything. 30 days is reasonable, Mom said quietly, pulling her arm away from Chloe. You're kidding me, Chloe whispered. Sign the paper, Chloe, Dad said, sliding the deed toward her. He wouldn't look at her. Sign it before she changes her mind. Chloe looked around the room, realizing she was completely alone. Her allies had defected. Her fantasy was over. With a shaking hand, she grabbed the pen. She scribbled her name violently, tearing the paper slightly. I hate you, she hissed at me. I hope you rot in this house. I'll be fine, I said, taking the paper. I have a very good contractor. The notary I had waiting in the car, a colleague from my firm, came in and stamped the documents 5 minutes later. It was done. The house was mine. The next month was a blur of activity, but of a different kind. I paid the $10,000 tax bill from my savings. It hurt, but it secured the asset. I filed the deed immediately. Chloe left on day 29. She made a huge scene, screaming and throwing boxes into a friend's van. She stole the toaster and the blender on her way out. I let her take them. It was a small price to pay for silence. My relationship with my parents is different now. They still live in the house. I own it. I come over once a month to check on the property, not to visit them. I inspect the boiler. I check the roof. I make sure the tenant maintenance is being done. The dynamic has shifted permanently. They are no longer the authority figures. They are guests in my house. They are polite, almost timid around me. They ask permission before painting a wall. They don't criticize my career or my choices anymore. Dad tries to make small talk sometimes. The garden looks nice, Ali, he'll say. It does, I'll reply, checking the water meter. Make sure you don't overwater. Rates are up. It's cold, I know it is, but it's safe. Chloe blocked me on everything, but I still keep tabs on her. She's living with a boyfriend in the next town over. I saw her name pop up on a small claims docket again last week. Some things never change. I didn't keep the house for the memories. The memories are tainted now. I kept it because it's a solid investment in a growing market. I'm currently converting the garage, the failed podcast studio, into an accessory dwelling unit, ADU. I hired a real contractor. It's going to be a beautiful studio apartment. I'm going to rent it out. The income will cover the property taxes and the insurance, with a nice profit on top. My parents live in the main house, grateful for the roof over their heads. I live in my apartment in the city, surrounded by my own things, paid for with my own money. Sometimes, people ask me if I regret being so harsh, if I regret suing my own sister and strong-arming my parents. I think about the phone call in the urgent care. I think about the $1 sale. I think about the tax bill they tried to dump on me. And I sleep like a baby. Because in the end, I didn't just get the house. I got my self-respect back, and that is an asset that never depreciates.